welcome to Bible. I've been missing you guys, and I want to start off the first day of the week with a little Bible story for you guys, and then you guys are going to do page 101 in your Bible workbooks, okay? But I want to talk to you guys today about a story where Jesus walks on water. And some of you guys might have heard this story in Sunday school, or your parents might have told you about it, but I really want to read you guys the story, and then I'm going to attach like a fun little animated video that kind of just shows you a little bit about the story on YouTube, okay? But I want you guys to listen. You guys can actually do page 101 while I'm reading, if that helps you to answer the question while I'm reading, or you can wait till I'm done reading and then you guys can do it on your own. But for right now, I want to talk to you guys a little bit about the story. Our memory verse this week is Deuteronomy 31:8, and I attached it in the email below for you guys, but I want you guys to practice your memory verse like we would practice normally in class, and then towards the end of the week I'll give you guys a chance to show me what you know regarding the memory verse, and like I can see who's been practicing and who hasn't been. But this week we are talking about fear, which kind of works out perfectly right now because I'm sure a lot of us have maybe experienced some fear with everything that's happening and with school being closed and just everything that's happening in the world right now. I know even myself at times have felt fearful, but it's important to remember that God is in control always, and He knew this was going to happen long before we ever did. And no matter what happens, Jesus is in control, and we do not need to be afraid, and He has His hand on this whole situation. So I want to talk to you guys about how Peter was fearful and he did not trust God. And it's important as young students, and even for me as a teacher, that we really can trust God during a time like this and just know that He is sovereign. So I want you guys to listen as I go ahead and read you this story. Okay. Okay. So, Jesus sent the disciples across the lake in a boat. It was very dangerous for the disciples to be out on a boat because a storm arose on the Sea of Galilee. The Sea of Galilee was like a really big lake, and there was a really bad storm outside, and Jesus sent His disciples out there anyways. The disciples probably would not have been able to row back to the shore against the strong waves. Water would have started to fill the boat, and they could have easily sunk. This was a terrifying thought. So I want you guys to close your eyes and grasp the idea of you guys being on a boat, okay? And imagine water shaking the boat and lightning and waves crashing over you. And you are terrified in this little boat, but you have to trust that God has His hand over you and He is going to protect you. I know it seems easy to just say that, but when you're actually in that situation, like imagine yourself in that situation, it becomes a lot harder to trust God during a time like that. So, as the disciples were out, a storm came up on the lake. Peter, Andrew, James, and John had been fishermen before they became disciples. So they had probably been in storms before, and they knew just how dangerous it was to be out in the middle of the sea during one of these storms. They probably rowed their boat as hard as they could. It was definitely a struggle. The disciples were afraid of the big waves and wind. Right in the middle of the storm, Jesus came to them. Jesus did not wait until they had to make it back to the land to come to be with them. He joined them when they were out on the lake struggling. So Jesus came to the disciples while they were on this boat struggling. He didn't wait for them to come back. He joined them in the midst of the huge storm. And then something crazy happened. Jesus walked on water. Have you guys ever walked on water before? No, it's impossible. But for Jesus, he was able to walk on water towards the disciples. Peter was not sure at first that the person walking on the water was Jesus, so he waited until he heard Jesus' voice. Peter wanted to be with Jesus, so Peter asked if he could come to Jesus. Jesus told Peter to walk towards him, but to not take his eyes off of him. However, Peter started looking all around at the strong wind and splashing waves. He stopped paying attention to Jesus and began to be afraid. Shortly after, Peter realized Jesus was the only one that could help him. However, because Peter took his eyes off of Jesus when Jesus told him not to, he began to sink. Then, once he started to sink, he realized Jesus was the only one who could save him. So in that moment, instead of panicking, he knew he had to put all his trust into Jesus. Jesus never left Peter, and Jesus rescued Peter. The disciples, after that, worshiped Jesus as the Son of God. So, why were the disciples in a boat on the Sea of Galilee? If you know, you can answer in your head. You could say it to your parents, say it out loud. Jesus wanted them to cross to the other side of the sea. So he told all the disciples to get in the boat and go. What happened as the disciples were in that boat? A huge storm came, right? And how did the disciples feel when they saw Jesus walking towards them on water? What was the first thing? They were terrified, okay? And then what miracle did Jesus do? Jesus allowed Peter to walk on water towards him. However, he told Peter one thing. You can walk on water, however, do not take your eyes off of me. But Peter disobeyed Jesus because he allowed his fear to take over. So what happened when he stopped paying attention to Jesus? He began to sink. And then in that moment, he realized Jesus was the only one who could save him. Okay, so you guys are going to do page 101. It looks like this. And basically, you're just going to put the story that I read out loud in order. You're going to label it 1 being the first thing that happened, all the way to number 9, which is the last thing that happened. So you guys are going to label the order of the story on page 101. And then I also want you guys to practice your memory verse and just to basically reflect on this story and to understand that we will sink, whether it's physically or just in life. We can start to sink and lose our faith in God during hard times like this, like something like the coronavirus that's happening. But this is not a time where Jesus wants us to sink and lose our faith, but instead he wants us to really rise up and trust him, even in the midst of chaos and uncertainty. So I hope you guys learned a little bit about Peter today, and you can take some of what I taught with you guys. And I'll see you tomorrow.